many, intangibles that they don't think. They just think about the playing time and how they're not a starter. It's really difficult. And I think that's part of the whole thing for them. That adjustment period is really sometimes they're just so shell shocked by that. They just don't know like what to do with themselves. And they don't know what it's like to be that role guy.
I agree with everything you just said. Everything. It's really true. But that's one of the things where, like we preach all the time, prepare for team success. And that's what we're trying to do, is prepare for team success with everything that we do. And, certain guys have to play roles, and it may not be the role you want, but if you do that role to the best of your ability, you're going to get other roles and additional roles and eventually get to where you want. And one of the advices I gave my own children when I went to college, and, was the people that persevere, the people that show resilience, they're the ones that generally works out for. And it's we all know this. Football teaches tremendous life lessons. Athletics teaches tremendous life lessons. And the biggest life lesson it teaches you is it's hard sometimes. It's hard sometimes. And you got to wake up and you got to go have a positive attitude and go do it anyway. And that's really important. The other big thing that I think it's really important for college coaches, high school coaches, everybody, you got to get your kids to cheer for the other guy. One of the hardest things is when you get somebody who's ahead of you and you see that they're ahead of you, to be really happy for their success. And that's when you can see, I love the 18 to 22-year-old group we work with, because you can see such a maturation process happen while they're in school. And it's just pretty awesome.
Coach, some of the challenges that you might see with respect to building and taking over the program, what are some of the things that you've had as challenges that you've really focused on really improving within the program since taking over?
Yeah, I think no matter where you go, when you enter a program that has not had a great deal of success in recent memory, the main issue you deal with is teaching the young men to believe that it's possible. There is so much outside noise that they hear. You got to teach them, hey, you know what? We expect to have success. If we work this and we do what we're supposed to do, and we go through everything that we're doing, we expect to actually have success. So teaching guys to believe that it's possible, teaching your own administration to believe that it's possible, all those type of things, I think, really play a huge factor in turning programs around. And I think that's really important. The other big thing is you don't focus on winning and losing. And I really do believe this. Most winning teams hardly ever talk about winning. They just talk about maximizing their abilities. They talk about becoming the best versions of themselves. They talk about, how good can we actually be as a team? How well do we perform? And that's the standard that we want to hold our guys to. How close are we getting to maximizing our performance? And if you do that and you recruit hard enough and you have a good off-season program, all something, you're going to continually get better. But when you're in a losing environment, I hate using that term, but a losing environment, what everybody talks about? Oh, we want to win. Hey, we got to win. We got to win this. We got to win this. We got to win that. We got to win that. No, that's you can want that, but that's not how you get there. And you got to stop talking about winning and losing. And once you stop worrying about winning, and losing, it becomes a freeing experience. And now you can just go and rip it and play, and play. And I think getting guys to understand that is great. And the other thing that I really believe is you can do everything right. I know, I think you said this before, but you can do everything right and things don't work out your way. Once you accept that, now it's so much freeing to do everything else. I'll never forget a Larry Bird quote. It really made a huge impression on me when I was a youngster. I guess I wasn't that young, but he missed a shot in the NBA Finals or an NBA playoffs, and it was the final shot of the game. And he missed it, and a reporter asked him, what did you think when you took the shot? And I'll never forget. He just said, I thought it was going to go in like every other shot I take. And I thought it was a great answer. He's just, not scared, not scared at the moment. Cause you know what, you're going to have struggles in life, and you got to know how to get up from it. And I think that's really important. And that's one of the great things when former players contact you and they say, Coach, I've thought so much about my time as a football player and how it's helped me in now my business world or whatever they're doing now. And I think once you teach guys how to maximize their potential and be the best version of themselves, the winning and losing takes care of itself.
Do you think the thing that I found when taking over, I've taken over at the high school level programs, similar, not at the college level, but similar to what you're taking over here and how you're trying to build it up. Do you think that in the early part, the games are kind of getting in the way of the overall improvement of the program, right? And the teams, and the practices are where you're making a good amount of the progress, obviously off season as well. And the games are just you're able to evaluate in the beginning where you're at, right? Like you see, and you're just you're first trying to get them to play each play as hard as they can to maximize that. And then you, like you said, not look at the scoreboard, but focus on what they got to do at each and every play and maximize that. Is that something that you're seeing? And then when does each step move into another direction where you're like, okay, we're starting to accomplish this really well. Now we need these. I want to make sure we hammer home that the performance at every stage it needs to be on point. How do you handle that in the building process?
I think that is a great question, and it really is, because I think one of the things that happens sometimes is, especially when you're taking over a program and it probably has some deficiencies to start with. So, again, just use an example. If you don't have a quality defensive backfield, you can play really, really hard and you can play really, really well in certain areas. But every time there's a third down comes and they exploit the secondary and you're trying to find an answer for that, just because you're not there, it can be a problem. So how do you, I think that's one of the worst things as a coach sometimes is when you enter camp or you're leaving the preseason practices and we got a little bit of a hole here. Let's hope we can hide it for as long as possible. And then, you get to a game and it doesn't hide it. So I agree, because you make your progress in practice. Like it's the same thing. You could have a freshman that's going to be really good as a junior, but he's on the field as a freshman and he just shouldn't be on the field yet. So I just want to tell you a quick story about that. When we went to Morris, when I got up to the University of Minnesota Morris, the best thing that happened to us is we didn't play that season. Because honestly, I think if we would have played that season, I think we would have went over. I just really believe we would have went over. But what we were able to do is we didn't play that season. We did the whole weight room thing. We got everything together, all that type of thing. And then we played the next season and went 5-5. And then our kid, and I still remember this vividly. We were playing our first game of the year, and we took the lead in the fourth quarter. Okay, and it was great. I mean, we took the lead in the fourth quarter. We'd just taken the lead. We kicked off to them. There was like 4 minutes left or something. I can't remember. And they returned the kickoff for a touchdown to retake the lead. And then we threw a pick late in the game and lost the game. But some of our kids right after the game says, "Coach, this was great." I'm like, "What was great?" I'm not real happy about what happened. He goes, "No, we were in the game in the fourth quarter." And I think you have to get to that. So I think there's a progress that you get. I think, at first sometimes you're gonna lose, and unfortunately you lose by a lot sometimes, and then the next time you got to get the games into the fourth quarter, and then you're learning how to do that in the fourth quarter, and then you're learning how to win. So I think there's no set formula. I think you got to look at each team and what it needs. So whether it's one team, it's like, look, our third down defense has not been good. We got to get better at third down zone defense, or third down conversion rate on offense needs to improve. And if we do that, we're going to be better. And then looking at very tangible things. One of the things too that I really believe, when you're winning and you're winning a lot, you don't need to grade film as much, because what you do is you just watch the film with the kids. You tell them what to get, because they're all, hey, we won, we're good, whatever. But if you're not having success, you need to give them some tangible things of, look, we're getting better. We graded out this way,
right,
better than what we did before, and give them a little bit more things, because they have to have hope. As a coach, I think one of the things that we have to do every single day is coach attitude and effort. And I think the other thing that we have to do every single day is infuse our team with confidence and belief that they can get things done. And I think that's really, really important. And if you can do those two things, eventually things will turn around.
Can you dive a little bit into that? So what is infusing them with confidence means? Because I think athletes, maybe parents that are trying to help their athletes along, to me, sometimes confuse instilling confidence with being overly positive, right? Like literally being like a cheerleader. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times, obviously, when you want to be very positive with your teams, and there's times where you have to have a level of critique of what they're doing. And obviously you need both, right? But I see this all the time with kids we work with at the higher levels, even like high school players, high level high school players, okay, to youth levels. Like I coach my son's team, they've been cultured in, like you go on, I don't know, YouTube and find 9,000 motivational speakers talking about how positivity is important, and positivity is important. But what instills confidence? Because I think that term is really the most important thing. It's not the word positivity, though positivity is a part of developing confidence. But developing confidence is the key. What do you think helps athletes, especially as you're going through that building process now, right? You're probably every day figuring out, what do we have to do to get them more confident in what they're doing, right? What do you think instills confidence in athletes?
Well, a couple of things before I answer that.
Sure. Yeah.
The one I absolutely agree with you in terms of like being positive doesn't mean necessarily that you don't get on kids, that you don't like I tell them all the time, like when I raise my voice, I'm just reminding you of your commitment level to be successful. And there's the positive. Sometimes you hear the word positive and you just think of Mr. Rogers. And I know I'm dating myself a little bit here.
No, you're right.
Yep. But it's still football, and you need to be able to there's just an element of it that there are still some things that are unacceptable on a football field, and if you're not giving effort, that's unacceptable. If you're not being physical, that's unacceptable, and they need to be told that, but they don't need to be called names in the process of doing that either. Right. So I think that's really, really important.
Yep.
But how do you infuse confidence? I think preparation breeds confidence. So you need to really prepare guys, and guys need to be willing to prepare properly to be successful. So how do you do that? Well, one of the best ways is obviously the weight room. I mean, you prepare for the season by being in the weight room and getting stronger, getting faster, getting quicker. We talk about the weight room all the time, but yes, strength is a huge part of it, but it's also movement. It's not
right.
just strength; it's your movement ability, all those type of things. But then I think when you're in season and you're looking at schematics and you're looking at those type of things, is there's calling plays, and then there's calling plays that the guys know that they're going to work. So I think it's really important that players understand exactly why you're doing what you're doing and why you're doing it. So, for instance, I'll just use this because I work with quarterbacks a lot. If we have this formation and they play this coverage, we should be able to complete this ball 80% of the time. And just know that. So when they come up on the ball, they take a look at it and they go, "Oh, you know what? The hitch is going to be there. We're going to throw the hitch right now, and there's no way that it can stop it." I'm a big believer in the way we use language is really important with our players too, because like when you're watching film with them, hey, look at this, look at the coverage, look at the front. Now, you tell me how they stop this play. Okay. Now, okay, how are they going to stop it? They're going to go to this. Now, what's our counter? Now we do this. So it's all about having them prepared and understanding what the actual game plan is. I think is also how you instill confidence in your players and infuse them with confidence. And then I think the next thing is same thing defensively. Defensively, you not only have to have confidence in yourself and your own abilities, you have to have confidence in your teammates. Same thing offensively, but you have to have confidence. So like defensively, we all know it almost works like a string. Like if somebody gets out of gap responsibility to plays, you give up a huge play. Well, you have to teach everybody, and they got to trust each other that they're going to be in the right gap. So making guys accountable for knowing what their assignment is and what their technique is, I think breeds confidence. And I think it's really, really important that it happens. And I also think the other thing that helps guys have confidence, and this is going to sound a little bit backwards, is when you don't have success, is being able to point out exactly why. And, when we do film sessions sometimes, instead of splitting up positionally, sometimes we'll keep the whole group together. And by keeping the whole group together, we're doing it specifically to see, hey, do you see how your steps impacted his ability to do his
Absolutely.
job?
Yeah, coach. And I think that's something for, especially at the high school level, guys don't understand how much it impact, like what guys do dictate what you do, right? For example, look, if I'm in the back end and play as a defensive back, like, yeah, well, where this D line stunt goes, now the linebacker has to replace, and now that what dictates which way we roll coverage or how we do. So I think that piece of it, I think more high school coaches need to approach it like that, in terms of, hey, how do you fit into the bigger picture? Which then I think ultimately allows high school players to understand the bigger picture within the team itself. And now they understand why their role is, and that there's more of a stress on doing your job correctly, right? Because a lot of guys, they just, hey, I got to make the tackle. Well, that's not your job here, dude. Like, I need you to take two, so that this guy can be free and he's going to make the tackle, which I think now creates even more of a buy-in from a team perspective, in terms of those guys really understanding you don't have to make every play. I just need you to do your job. And I think those are the teams that get that and can kind of preach that and push that a little bit more are the ones that ultimately you have a little bit more success with.
Absolutely. And I think that's the big thing. And it goes on, you hit it, you didn't say the word, but it's communication. Communication is the other big thing to infusing confidence in there. Like, if we communicate your responsibilities well, and then each guy communicates with the other guy well on the field, our confidence level just continues to build. And I think that's just extremely, extremely important.
No doubt about it. When you are when you're building a program and you're communicating like your message to them, and you're communicating like the steps of success to them, so where they got to go from here, and you want X amount of games this year, this is where we're looking to go. How do you communicate those steps of success to them, in a team meeting, and really give them actionable items that they can do? I mean, I know the weight room is part of that, but because I think that's such a big deal in building a program, and obviously in college football, you have to do it much quicker than you used to. Like, you used to have a longer time period to do it. That part's changed probably at all levels, I guess, my guess. But
yeah, I got caught in that one time, but that's besides the point. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah, but it just adds to what it is, coach. It adds to your experience, because you've been in it. Like, again, go back to the whole thing. You can do everything right, and it still ain't it's just not how it works, right? Like, sometimes it's just not there. Things just don't go the way you want it to. But it's 100% part of it.
Well, I think one of the big things in meetings and that I believe in is you don't necessarily talk about where your overall record's going to be at the final and all. I think what you do is you go into the minute detail. So for instance, I'll just use this as an example. I think yards per play is one of the biggest determinants for success for both offense and defense. It just is. So, we have an expression here, every yard matters, and that's part of that. So one of our big deals this year was we wanted to increase our yards per play offensively. We wanted to decrease our yards per play defensively. And those are things that we kind of have our set figures of where we want it to be. And we go through each game, win or lose. We go through the positive and negatives of every game. And we tell our guys, this is what we did well, this is what we didn't. And then we do the same thing in the off season. Okay, this is where we need to have our improvement areas, and just be very specific with it. Because then you can go into the season and say, look, we're not making the strides we need to make in this area, guys, yet. Or, hey, guys, we we really did make huge strides in this area, and it becomes really like if in year one, you have a 28% third down success rate, and in year two you have a 39% success rate, you got better as a program, even if it didn't show up on the scoreboard yet. So I think going into those type of details so they can really see this is actually happening, this is actually working. We and quite frankly, we got games into the fourth quarter this year because our yards per plays were better. I mean, literally, when you go down and do it, and everybody talks about turnovers, and turnovers are huge. By the way, we turned the ball over too much this season, but turnovers are huge. Okay, but they're not. They're not the only thing. You got to go beyond the turnovers. You got to go beyond this. What are we averaging? Each time, and I have figures. Offensively, and I. All the time for our guys, and our defense has figures as well too that we talk about. This is where it should be. It should be at this level or above. Okay, this is what we're striving to get to, and I think that's how you go about doing it. And then you let conference rankings and all those other type of things. They'll all happen by themselves.
Coach, how do you get people outside of your program to buy into that, right? Because we know outside figure optics, wins and losses. Like, did you win? Did you not win? Right? Like, how do you swing that saying, look, I know on paper it doesn't look like we're improving, but we are. How do you really kind of hammer that home whether it be, administration coming at you, or whether it be parents, even other assistant coaches, because I'm sure that's hard as well as assistant coaches to hammer home, like, look, you guys, like, I understand where you're at and you're pissed that we're losing, but we're growing, we're improving. We're getting there, right? Like, you got to trust it and go with it. How do you kind of swing that message?
Well, I think number one with the assistant coaches, I think it's much easier because we're going to talk about being in proper alignment from day one in the coaches meetings, and we know what we're trying to accomplish. We all the figures I was talking about before we talked about, and we're going to set. And I also think it's important to have open communication. Like I tell our guys, if you see something that you think would help us, or something even better that you disagree with, like come talk to us about it, and we'll go. I use this expression all the time with our assistants. I love when I find out I'm wrong about something, because if I find out we're wrong about something, then we can improve it. I think that's really important. Now, the other constituencies that you say, you got to understand that they're answering to other people. So like the athletic director may be answering to the alumni and the board of trustees and those type of things. So he's under different pressures on what their expectations of the program for. And I think what you need is an alignment from the administration as well too, that they have to be saying the correct things as well too, of saying, hey, you know what, this is where we are. This is where we're going. This is what I can see the progress being made. And I think to avoid knee-jerk reactions, and unfortunately at the D1 level right now, you see so many knee-jerk reactions to things that happen, and you see it at the high school level. You see it, everywhere. Just recently there was a change at a D2 school, and they finished second in their conference, and what's going on, and so
right.
I think it's something that you continually do. You continually stress the positives of your program. You continually stress what you're trying to accomplish, and you don't talk about wins and losses. And everybody thinks that's great when you're winning. When you're losing, all they want you to do is talk about the wins, and when are we going to win? And the answer is, I don't know. I just know that if we continue to do things correctly, we are going to get to this point, and we're going to rise. Like here, we're going to rise in the OAC, and we're going to rise. When you rise in the OAC, you're going to rise nationally, and I think that's really, really important. But having your goal, but again, from a holistic perspective, if we graduate our players and we provide a transformational, beneficial experience for them, we're really doing our jobs. We are doing our jobs, and we're helping them become the best version of themselves. We're doing our jobs. Now, I'm about as competitive a person as you want to meet. Now, I want them to graduate with some rings as well, too.
Yeah, hell yeah.
We're doing those three things first. I can live with the result. Now, not everyone's going to feel that way, and that's why you get situations where guys have given their life road to a high school program, a college program, D3, D2, D1, NIA, it doesn't matter. And then all of a sudden, administration decides they want to make a change. It's just part of life, and it's an unfortunate part of the coaching profession, but it is. I mean, it is what it is, and I actually said this the other day. I mean, the ones who pay the price for that are the coaches' families, you know, and
100%.
that's what's really hard. And you know, it is. I went to a high school football game one time, and I was, you know, it was the area where we had just moved into on a job, and I went to a high school football game, and I knew the coach a little bit, and so I'm standing by the fence, and he deferred. You know, they won the toss and deferred, and there's a guy in the stands right behind me. Starts yelling, "Hey, coach! Why don't you try taking the ball for a change? Why you always got to give it to the other team? You don't know what you." And I turned around, and I mean, he was red faced. I mean, I'm like,
Lighten them
you
up.
got to be kidding me. Like, and I'm just like, you know, so you just know you're always going to deal with it. Like, you can't coach in this profession if you're going to be worried about what everybody thinks. You just hope the people that are making the decisions about your future are thinking the right way, and you're showing them what's the value is. And I think the people that you care about the most are the players, number one, and number two then is their parents as well too, that they see the value of what you're trying to do for their sons.
Right.
Other than that, I'm probably not the best guy to ask that question to about the best way to you know, get people. But I do think it's just constantly selling your vision for the program and what you're trying to do. And the reality is too, I think some of the best coaches out there, quite frankly, at the high school level, at the college level, are some of the ones that keep their programs 5-5, 6-4 every year, and they have not the resources that some of the other people have, and they just do a phenomenal job year in and year out. And I think that gets lost, unfortunately, sometimes.
No doubt. What about for me at least, finally, building your staff and how you go about building a staff? Now I'm sure there are coaches that you've known for a long time that you bring with you, and then you're bringing in some new staff. How do you go about constructing a staff that and probably you have to always revise it every year, I'm assuming. Not that you want to, but guys are going to go to different places and stuff like that, you know. So how do you go about building your staff and continuing to keep a continuity among the staff?
Well, I think there's a number of things. Number one, for us to hire anyone, we want them to first and foremost care more about the players off the field than on the field. You gotta somehow show that to us, make us know that that's truly part of your personality. I use this expression all the time. You really get to know somebody when you go through a 1-9 season with them. And I really hope never to get to know any of our assistants that well. But you really learn.
That's great.
You learn about people that way, and I think that's really important. So number one, you just got to be someone who cares more about the kids off the field and the impact that you can have. You want to be great teachers and mentors, first and foremost. Second, to care, and you got to be great teachers and mentors. And then third, you got to fill specific roles and be willing to fill those specific roles. When you're doing an interview process for your staff, one guy leaving a staff can greatly change the dynamics of the staff depending on what position that they held. So you have to look at the strengths and weaknesses of every person you bring in, because anyone you bring in has strengths and everyone you bring in has weaknesses. So you need to, as a head coach, be willing to step into wherever their weaknesses might be, and let them accentuate their strengths and stay out of the way to let them do the things that they do really well. So I think you have to have all of that. And I think you also want to know, what their goals are. I really think at the college level, especially, we want guys that want to be head coaches at some point or coordinators or whatever in the profession. And I think that's really important. One of the things that I learned a long time ago, and I tell all our staff, I did this when I was a coordinator, do it as a head coach. You need to dress, act, and be like the position you want to get. So if you want to be a head coach someday, you need to act like you're a head coach right now. If you want to be a coordinator someday, you need to dress, act like you're a coordinator. We want people on campus to just assume that you're the coordinator and not realize that you're a position coach. And I think that's really, really important. But also being willing to do whatever role that you want. And I think egos have to be checked at the door. I joke, like, I want guys that egos are so large that they can't be bruised and they don't care where good ideas come from. And that's like sometimes we use ego as a bad thing. I mean, you have to have certain confidence in yourself to be able to do this job and do it well, but you also need to know when to take that back seat and when you want to do it. But I also want guys that are going to continually evolve their thinking. And what I mean by the same thing I said before, like I love when we find out we're wrong about something, and like to me, one of the best things about going to a new staff is learning a new way to do things. Learning a new way to do things. I think that is awesome when you get to do that. And if you just come into a staff and like, this is the only way I want to do this, well, sometimes that's not going to work. You got to work a little bit harder to find out. Now, when you're putting together a staff, it takes time for the staff to gel and to merge and do type of things. I do want to say this right now. Our staff here, we are phenomenal. We are, I love our guys. They are in line. I don't want any of them to ever leave. But with that, I would say I think all of them will eventually leave because they're great coaches and they're going to get other opportunities at times. But right now, we all just want to see the same thing. We want to see Wilmington College be successful. And I think that's really important. You can't have a coordinator. If you really want to be successful and maximize your ability as a team, you can't have a coordinator that's worried about his numbers, rather than worrying about, being the most successful team that they can be. And I think that's really important. And, I way back when I was a fast-paced no-huddle guy, and when no one was running fast-paced no-huddle, and it was great, and it gave us an advantage and all those type of things. And what Morris, one of the things that we did is we took a step back and said, you know what, we don't have the depth, and we don't have some of the things that we need to be able to run that type of system. So it took a little bit to take a step back and say, no, this is not what we're going to do right now. We're going to come out of the huddle old school now. And now now I think we give more teams trouble by coming out of the huddle than we do when you're just showing your formation right off the bat.
Right.
But it is kind of funny. So I think it's wanting guys that'll I mean, to sum up, love their kids, love football, want what's best for the program, and are always willing to learn. If you got those type of guys, they're going to be successful. They really are.
No doubt. That's a great point. By the way, I love that about the football is that like no huddle was the thing. Yeah, whatever gives you advantage is what you got to be willing to do, and figure that out for your team because. Yeah, at one point, no huddle was like that gave you a huge advantage. At one point, formations and use of people didn't know how to move guys out of the box and what personnel to have out there, right? And then now there are guys that don't know how to handle if you just come right downhill at them because they're like, wait a minute, I recruited like slim guys for linebacker that are fast, and now they got to take on 300-pound guys. What do I do? I think that's one of the great things about football. One of my favorite things used to be, hey, you put it into play and people like, throwing out a play if it doesn't work the way you want it to, like being willing to throw away a play. Like that's an important thing because sometimes what you think is going to work and then you go out there and actually apply it, it doesn't work, right? Or it's not a fit maybe for that group of people. And you don't actually have those guys to do that kind of a thing, whether it's offensively or defensively.
Good. I was going to say another thing on that because it just made me think.
No, dive into it. That was going to be my question. So yeah, I got to dive into it.
I think it's really good. Like I think we all make a mistake sometimes when we try to coach last year's team this year. Like, but your personnel's changed and the defenses you're seeing are changed or the offenses you're seeing are changed. And so it has to evolve each year. And you just can't just because what we do, like we had I'll just use this example, had a really good receiver and he does. So we just try to take the next best kid in the program and stick him there and expect the same results. Well, there's a reason the other kid was starting over that kid. You have to be a little bit more diverse. And that's one of the things that I really believe too, is the more you can spread the ball around is more important with the less talent that you have, if that makes any sense. You have one kid who's just better than everybody else. Yeah, you get him the ball as much as you can. Which leads me to the next thing about hiring coaches too. The other thing that someone told me one time, which I think really resonated with me, is you got to hire people that like to do the things you don't like to do too. And that's really important. So
absolutely.
For me, like I said this morning, as you guys saw, I'm not really great with technology. We're trying to get on this call, so I better hire some guys that are good with technology. Right. there's got to be at least one tech guy on the staff, and you know, and I think that's really important. And the other thing that at the college level, we got to hire guys that are great recruiters. You know, because if you don't, you know, that's going to be a problem, and they don't mind doing that job. And you got to enjoy recruiting. And yeah, sure, it's time consuming, it's all type of thing, but you got to really enjoy doing it.
Yeah,
I think that's part of at your level, that recruiting aspect. I think that's part of you know, a lot of people just think coaching is, you know, what you do on the field. You know, it's the X's and O's, it's the actual football part of it. When in reality, you know, at that level, your lifeblood of success is getting the right players on that field. And in order to do that, you got to be able to go and recruit. And I think that's a piece of it that a lot of the younger age coaches really, some guys are really, really good at it. Some guys have absolutely no clue and just think that because they're really good at Madden that they can come in and coach college football and not and right away call plays and be a coordinator and not really go through that grind of growing and seeing all of those things that really go into what being a coach really, really is at a high level. Is that something that you see, Coach, with, you know, I guess, you know, the younger coaches coming into this world now? I mean, they have access to more than we ever had, but just not really willing to, or don't understand really the bigger picture of what being a coach really is. Is that something that you're seeing?
Well, I think I'm just gonna go a little bit different. I think every coach that gets into the profession has no idea what they're getting into when they get into it. You know, so the coaches that go in with the open minds tend to be more successful. And the coaches that are like, hey, can you teach me how to recruit? Certainly we can. And I think that's one of the biggest differences with some like you can't just have one really good conversation with a kid and think he's gonna come to you. You know, right.
He's ours.
It's the constant, consistent communication, and it's how well does the campus visit go, and all those type of things, and knowing that there's a lot of reasons why a kid may choose not to come to your school, and it may have nothing to do with you, and that's okay, because again, it's a matchmaking process. It's about finding the right fit. But I will, like, my wife and I, we've been married a long time, but when early in our marriage, people used to ask me, like, what do you do in the off season? And I used to joke, I'm like, nothing. It's a great job, you know, whatever. And she would be like, you stop telling people that, like, because I was like, I don't want to get into the whole thing. And like, she would always say, like, wait for the end of the football season. And she's like, oh, I'm so happy the football season's over. And then she's like, I forgot recruiting's worse, you know, for a little bit, because like in the football season, like you just knew, okay, Thursday night I'm getting home for dinner with.
Right. It's more regimented schedule rise. Recruiting on the off season. Look, you could be out to dinner and all of a sudden, I got to take this call because like this could be my next quarterback. Like we got to go. Like totally understandable.
It's just kind of different, and that's you know, one of the other things that I think too, having longevity in the coaching profession. You have to find ways to manage your family and manage your profession. And you know, there's so many guys that kind of spin out of control because they just don't know how to find that proper balance. And I think it's a work in progress every single year.
It's something at the high school level that guys struggle with right now. Look, with the high school, and especially now, I feel like, you know, with the way it's evolved, just, you know, football, if you're the head football coach, man, that it's a 365-day a year, 7-day a week job at the high school level. You know what I mean? Now, you know, I've talked to guys in the profession, you know, I have buddies that have gone from college to the pros, and they love that because look, like there's free agency and it's a business, and there, you know, it's more regimented in terms of like, hey, I know when we have to do this, or in season it's this, but you know, college and high school, look, it used to be, you know, August to December, and that's not the case anymore. If you're not in that weight room 4 or 5 days a week in the off season, if you're not, you know, pounding the pavement to get your guys recruited or going to clinics or doing all that extra stuff, like you're going to be left in the wayside. And you know, people are going to compare you. Hey, this guy over here is doing this. Why aren't you doing that? And you're going to be out of a job real quick.
Right, and you didn't even mention dealing with your booster clubs and everything else, and all you got to go into that stuff, and that's that's why, like, I've never been a guy who's been like, okay, it's better over here or it's better over there. I mean, I think I have so much respect for every level of coaching, because guys put their heart and soul into it, and just trying to help their kids out, and you just got to tip your hat to it. To all the great coaches that are out there. And I think, I really do believe this. Like, I think there are a lot of D1 coaches that would trade places with a D3 coach or a high school coach in a heartbeat if it wasn't for the pay.
Right.
The pay scale.
Coach, we've had guys on here, Coach, that we have guys on here that would look like, because everybody always assumes, even as a high school coach, right? Like, everybody always assumes that your aspirations are to be a coordinator, to be a head coach, to make the jump to college or whatever that is. And some guys are just really happy where their feet are. They understand their program, the town dynamics, the school itself, or, hey man, like, even myself, like, I am very happy being an assistant high school football coach. There is no way you could get me to have those keys as a head coach and deal with some of the things that guy deals with on a regular basis, right? Like, some guys just understand that, and it's hard for people to process. They always think that they want something bigger, better, or, just because the monetary value changes, I love impacting high school players. I think it's where you can have the biggest impact on them, watching them come in as a little, scrawny 8th grader, and all of a sudden by the time they leave, they're full bearded and, mature as hell, right? That I think to me is the ultimate, and that might not be not for others.
Well, and I think, it's just finding the right fit for you. And I always laugh, like when people say, I can't believe so-and-so didn't take that job. Well, you don't know what the family circumstances is. He could have wanted it, but his family, they wanted to have their kids finish high school, all those type of things. Didn't want to be like, I don't, like, everybody has their own reasons for doing what they do. And it's just, you said something that I firmly believe in. Just do a great job where your feet are, have your mind where your feet are. Do a great job there and not worry about other things. And that's where I've been very fortunate in my career. I tell people all the time, I'm living the dream every single day. I had two main goals when I graduated college. One was to marry Julia, which I was fortunate enough to do. And, I don't know how she feels about it, but she's still with me. So that's pretty cool. And I wanted to coach
college. That's a win. That's a win. Yeah. That's a win.
Especially as a coach, that's a win.
As a coach, you'll take it. We'll take it all day.
And believe me, I so far outkicked my coverage. I have no idea. I think for the first 10 years of our marriage, I was just expecting her to walk in one day and just be like, I have no idea why I married you. I'm out of here. But unfortunately,
I still say it to mine. I still say it to her every day. What are you doing?
Fortunately, that didn't happen. I mean, that's really what I want to do. I wanted to spend my life with her and raise a family, which we were able to do and fortunate enough to do. And I wanted to coach football, and I've had the opportunity to coach college football. Since the day I graduated college, and I mean, I'm just one of the most blessed people on the face of this earth.
No doubt. Last question I have for you: the players that you're looking for from a recruiting standpoint in your program, what are the main characteristics that you're looking for? If a kid's, you reach out to them, they're interested. What are the things that you like? This is what the players need to have in order to be in our program.
Well, number one, it's a burning passion and a burning desire to play football. And it's funny, you will find some very good football players that don't have that. They don't want to do everything else that's important. We want guys that want to strive for excellence in everything that they do. We want them to be guys that love the weight room. We want guys that love the workouts. We want guys that love to go out to practice early and those type of things. That's more important than talent. I mean, talent's important. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But having those qualities, intangible qualities, are even that much more important. But they're the hard ones to find out until you work with them every day. But that's what we're looking. We're looking for guys that are going to put team first, that have a team first mentality. So again, if you have a burning passion, desire to play, you have a great work ethic, and you're going to put the team first, you're going to be successful. You're going to be successful in life, and those are guys that we really want. But we also recognize the fact that part of what we're doing is helping our young men mature, helping our young men grow. We want to have a growth mindset here. So we know we're not going to get finished products when they come in. And that's what we're going to try to help them become finished products, so to speak, and help them really use Wilmington College as an example here as a launching pad to future success. And if we can do that, then we feel really, really good about the kids that we're bringing in. Now, certainly, yeah. Do we want guys that are talented, can help us compete in the OAC, all those other things? Absolutely. And we evaluate that. There's no question. But those other things are actually more important, and I use offensive linemen as an example at the D3 level, because offensive linemen, I think, are some of the hardest to evaluate out there. Because number one, you get a lot of kids that are growing into their bodies late.
Yeah.
Number two, you get guys that can make themselves into quality offensive linemen by sheer will, determination, and work ethic. So you get a kid, might be a little bit undersized. He comes, he puts on weight, all those type of things, and becomes a very, very good college player.
He's a
They're
killer.
the hardest ones to evaluate in my mind of who's going to actually make it and who's not going to make it in college. Where you can look, and I hate to say it this way, but it's just factual. You look at a receiver and he's too slow. He's too slow. Like, yes, he can catch the ball versus zone coverage all the time, but as soon as the defense plays man-to-man and crawls into his face, that's the separator. So I think it's easier to evaluate some other positions from a athletic standpoint. But then you have, again, I look at linebackers as another thing that's hard to evaluate sometimes, because you just get that guy who's the will, he's going to make every play. And so linebackers, all those type of things, I think it's hard. And look at this too. I know I got off on a tangent here, but look at the millions and millions of dollars that the NFL spends on evaluating quarterbacks every year, quarterback position every year, and look at how many times they get it wrong. And it's amazing, and especially
a lot more than they get it right. I'll tell you that much. You know what I mean? So there's sure as hell ain't a perfect science.
But you know what the NFL's great at quarterbacks? A guy that will last at least as a career backup.
100%.
Every one of the guys they bring in, whether they're a first rounder or a fifth rounder, if those guys make it, they're pretty good about a guy who's a career. But making it a guy becoming an actual star or a great player, that's still somewhat a crapshoot, because all the physical skills can be a certain level of that. It's important, but they're still at quarterback position. They're still up top, and there's still work ethic, and there's things that until they get into that game, you really don't know. And they may have, it's hard for young athletes to understand at the high school level, but there are some athletes that are so far above other people, and it sounds crazy because even at the college level, Division I, there are some guys that are so far above other people. Not that they don't work hard, but they are so far above. When you go to the NFL, it's the great equalizer, because everybody is athletic, everybody's talented, everybody's at a very, 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 very high level. So all those things that you might have been able to get away with at the college level, and it's crazy because a lot of people can't fathom it because they weren't as athletic as that person is. But those things that came in, now they have to kind of hunker down. They got to learn certain things, and they got to be willing to do the things that they might have gotten away with for a very, very long time. And offensive lineman is a great example when you talk about the NFL, like the tackle position in particular. How often they're wrong on tackles, because it's so hard to be able to say, okay, this guy dominated at the college level as a lineman, and now he's got to go against some guy that runs the 4.5 40 coming off the edge. And it's not just about his physical presence; it's about his ability to learn where these guys are moving to, and they've got to be able to adapt, and they've got to know when to kick hard and when not to kick hard, and when to set, and when to move short and when to move long, and those things are really those things are not easy. And so you see even the second position that a lot of these guys have failed at a very, very high rate is that left tackle position when they draft them high, very similarly to the quarterback, right? These guys were clearly better, and it's interesting how they're linked. But I do think you're 100% correct on the linemen at the college level, that those guys that are, especially Division III, if you have enough attributes, if you have enough physical attributes, enough of them, meaning, if you're 5'6" and 155 pounds, it's
Maybe
you can be, 99% of the time you can be everything you want to be. It's just not going to happen. But if you have enough of the physical size and attributes, and you're long on will and determination, I think as an offensive lineman, there's a long way to go. And then listen, at the high school level, you might be able to get away with a 5'7" guy that's willing to put on weight and be 200 pounds. And so each level, there's things that are different but linemen that are willing to do that, I agree with you 100%. That's the one position where guys are like, oh, it's like, man, where determination could go? Right on the offensive line. Determination and hard work, that goes the longest over every other position.
You can win a lot of games if you got 5 of those cats up front.
Exactly. Well, two things just to go back for a second. One, if you take the worst guy on the practice squad of an NFL team, so somebody's the worst, I don't know who it is, but the worst practice squad player on an NFL team, he is a phenomenal football player.
Yes.
He is a phenomenal football player.
No doubt. No doubt.
And he can probably do the job if called upon. It's just
right.
The reality of what it is. He may never get the opportunity, but he can probably do the job. But I think the other thing that you mentioned too that I think was really wise is the adaptability part. And a lot of people use the term coachable, or they'll say somebody's uncoachable. And I think that has a lot of negative connotation, but I think sometimes in the wrong way. I think it's attitude. Sometimes players, they've done it one way for so long. The adaptability to do it a little different way when they go to a different system becomes sort of can become problematic, especially if they're not the phenomenal athlete, which again leads me back to what we started today with a little bit with the transfer portal.
Very true.
One of the issues I think with the transfer portal that happens when you transfer all the time, you don't always go through the same offseason program, and the techniques that you're getting taught may be different, even though it's the same position, may be different from school to school. So now you're not developed over a 3 and 4 year period. And so I think it's harder for you to maximize your ability to do it. I'm not anti-transfer, and there's certainly times that you should and reasons why you should, but it is one of the drawbacks when you do that. You're not getting the same thing for 4 straight years.
Now, Coach, in retrospect to that, is adaptability and coachability two totally different things?
No, I think they're very similar, but I do think it they kind of have offshoots that make them a little bit different, and coachability, I think, does get more into attitude at times too, and it can. It's not the sole thing of it. I think it just gets remembered. But again, it's like coachability. I'm trying to coach you to do this technique different, and then you're being resistant because you're not adaptable to it. That's like, how quickly can you adapt? I mean, I had a quarterback one time who was an absolutely phenomenal young man, and he was a really good player for us, but he needed an exorbitant amount of reps to get good at anything. But he was great because he was willing to do that. Like, he was willing to put in those reps. But every time, we tried something new or put a new concept in or new whatever, he would look like he was a junior high kid, like playing football for the first time but he was one of those kids, you taught him a drill. If he did it bad that day, he was going home and he was working on that drill in his basement until he got good at it, so he could show you he was better the next day. And that's why he willed himself to having a very successful college career. But it was always kind of funny when we do something for the first time, because you're like, how does everybody think you're athletic? It just because he just needed more and more time to develop. And I think what happens at the NFL level, and I've never been there, but at the NFL level, if it takes you a little bit slower to learn, if they haven't put a lot of money into you, they're just going to move on.
That's
true. They got other guys that are going to do it quicker. It doesn't mean you couldn't have gotten it eventually. And that's why I think sometimes you see guys that have been around, and then all of a sudden it breaks for them, and they have phenomenal careers. I mean, Kurt Warner is the obvious example of that, where it finally broke for him, and then he made that most of that opportunity. That's for sure. I mean, one of the greatest quarterbacks who ever played.
Well, there's no doubt that quarterback and offensive linemen require that that long-term ability to continue to work and learn things because of the positions that and the knowledge you have to have as you're going through that position process and the skill sets and their varied skill sets. Whereas there are certain positions on the field that running back is my example. How long do so many running backs now? Obviously, look, the running back that's willing to learn, that's do all those guys are you're going to be like, wow, this guy's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But there's a certain, a guy can run. Most guys can really run the ball and see where the holes are going to go through and get through them and know how to maneuver through them by the time they get to the college level, or they can't. Like there's a certain amount of that. Now you can improve it. Like all the drills you do, there's no doubt that you can improve those things. Absolutely. But but you could see that when there are certain guys that get through something and you say, how did they get through that? And they didn't do it again and do it over and over again. You're like, okay, like he feels something that other people don't feel. And, it's the X factor, right? There's more X factor athletes outside of in the heavy skill position areas like running back, receiver, defensive back. Not that they don't have to, obviously, the more intelligent they get within their position, the better they're going to get. But there's certain raw aspects to it. Whereas like, it is amazing how you see Tom Brady's obviously the easy, simple example of someone that obviously he was tall. He's 6'5". It wasn't like he was short or anything like that, like 5'5" or something trying to play quarter. But, he really was able to will himself to continue to get better. And you notice that, like, one of the things you notice is like those guys like a Tom Brady or even Michael Jordan, like they never feel like they're good. Like they know they're good. They know they're confident in their ability, but they never feel like they're there. That's the better word. They never feel like they got to where they should get to. They're constantly striving for something that's probably unattainable, okay, a level of perfection, but they never feel like, and that bar keeps moving. So when they get to a certain point, they're willing to move the bar. Like, I learned all this, great. Now, you know what? I'm not good at this still, and I'm not good at this still, and I'm not good at this still. And how do I get good at that?
I love that because it's an expression that will use. Like your team's getting good when your best players act like they're trying to make the team every practice.
Yes.
If when you get to that point, now just everything rises. And I think that's just an outstanding observation.
I love to point out, like, when a kid, in my case, I'm working with kids. You're working with adults. When a kid says something, so let's say you're coaching through something, or you ask them, you say something, and you're on the field and you're moving fast, and a kid turns around and says, "Hey, we got to do this on this play." I love to point out, like, "Hey, so and so is really smart. Like, this guy understands what's going on." Because the other kids don't, when they're moving fast through practice, sometimes they don't know who they can talk to after practice about something that outside the coach, right? Because some kids are not as, even as adults, they're not as comfortable going to the coach about every single thing, right? This kid right here, he understands everything we're doing, or a good amount of what we're doing. You know what I mean? And pointing that out, so they turn and look, and sometimes they're surprised by who it is. You know what I mean? And I'll have kids that, I'm at the younger levels. I'll have kids that raise, "Hey, coach, I know what we're doing." I'm like, "Yes, but he said it quickly. I know that he knows." Right. So it starts to kind of feel that within your culture, right? Like kids now, being smart is important in football, because sometimes they think it's all about how athletic they are. You know what I mean? Like scoring touchdowns, like being smart is an important thing. Like being a person that's aware of what's actually happening in the game, not just a robot going out and, okay, my route is 10 yards, I break in, like run my 10 yards, break in, catch ball. Like, understanding what's going on, the bigger picture of what's going on, because obviously that helps you, that helps you win, because the more people that do get it, it helps the guys that, hey, who are narrowly focused, that's who they are. They need to do that. You need to have those guys too that understand those things, and players to know, hey, you could go to this guy if you need to know a little bit more, if you don't feel like coming to me for some reason. Is that something that you kind of see in
Oh,
college?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely. The football IQ is such a big deal, and one of the things that I think as you turn programs around, as you've been in a system for a few years, you get to have your upperclassmen coaching the younger kids when they come in, and we
Best thing
actually
ever.
we have done a thing at times in the first couple of days of practice where we don't necessarily have a first group out there. We mix the groups. So now we have freshmen in the huddle and with upperclassmen in the huddle and all that type of things so they can help each other out. Now you can't do that for long, but you can do that for a little bit. But then our guys, and really almost every place I've been, and it was great this year especially, our guys are in the back after they come out after each play talking to each other about, how they could have done it better or whatever. And, just like a receiver reminding another receiver, hey, remember, you got to take an outside release there, or you got to take a dive release there, or whatever it's going to be. And that's when I think that's when it gets that just much better, when you have everybody helping each other out.
No doubt. Coach, it's been phenomenal. Derek, I don't know if you have anything else.
No, I'm good, Coach. I appreciate you taking the time, man. We've taken up far too much of your time, but I appreciate
No doubt.
your willingness to have a conversation, sit down with us, and talk some ball. I took a lot of great things from it, and much success in the future.
Thanks. This was a lot of fun. Really appreciate you guys having me on, and I got to say this because it's something we say at Wilmington all the time. Let's go green. It's just this is great. I mean, it's a great place, and I just really appreciate you guys having me on today.
Thanks so much, Coach Burke. I really appreciate it, and have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, Coach. Bye. All right, that was great pod.
Good stuff, man.
Unfortunately, I didn't record the first 45 minutes of it. So I guess I warmed us up. So that's why I had to backtrack a couple questions, but
all good.
We got it all covered. When I realized, I was like, oh my God, I don't know how much time I have left with him. And he was so awesome with everything. I was able to kind of backtrack on a couple things, and go to it. And you did a great job asking him some questions that were really I think he was really gracious with his time. I mean, really, really gracious with his time.
It was funny too. This morning, he's like, "Look, man, because I had booked it. It's one of those hey, Coach, I know you're in season right now, but when you finish up, whatever." He's like, "Absolutely, looking for a date or whatever." And he's like, "Look, everybody's out of the office recruiting. They're all on the road. I'm the one holding the fort down right now. So let's do it." And I got an ample amount of time for whatever it is. Those are the guys that are look. There's not a guy we've had on, dude, that they haven't been so open in terms of however it is. Nobody's trying to hide secrets or gain an advantage. Everybody just kind of hey man, how can we help your audience understand what we're talking about? And guys like that who have kind of been around the block, or you know what I mean, they've done it at a couple different places and have worn a couple different hats and things like that, and now really kind of come into fruition about I think this is a place that he's trying to obviously, build and improve, and he's got the right people in the building, and those guys are just so open to sharing, what they think is the best road to success, and then, kind of give everybody else information to kind of educate others on how this process works, or, you know what I mean? Look,
no doubt
we know this, but one of the best things I thought was the amount of academic money. It's unbelievable.
Crazy.
Just because it's not an athletic scholarship, most people get deterred by, D3's no athletic money. Yeah, dude, but there's that much more academic money. So, you know what I mean? Do really good in school, and here's your quote scholarship. It's just with a different title attached to it. If we can get more parents to start thinking like that, this whole process might not be as hard for some people as they think.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal. The D3. The D3 component in that has become the left by the wayside by the parents and the athletes until it's too late, and they don't address it, and they're left scrambling. And I think it's important that you start to, as much as you want to go to whatever school you want to go to, you almost really nowadays you should have in your back pocket 2 or 3 Division threes or Division two,
100%.
like 2 or 3.
What used to be your safe school, you know what I'm saying? Like that type of gig. Like, but Dave, like I've also like we've talked to FBS guys that are, the they're the director of player personnel at a Power 4 school saying, hey, if you're a high school kid, like you're not getting a scholarship unless you can walk in the door and be on the 2 deep. Like that's what it is now, dude. Like you're not coming in here as like a, hey, we're going to develop you and we're going to like, you got to be able to like a plug and play guy right now. And if you're not that, then go to a lower level, build your skills, and then, transfer up. It's just a totally different outlook on it than we've ever seen before. You know what I mean? It's different now. So educate yourself and that's now the road to take rather than, oh, this is a 4-year decision and you're here for 4. Like it's not the case.
No doubt. All right. Well, have a great weekend, Derek. And,
sounds good, buddy.
Sounds great. And great job. Great guest. Really, really.
All right, man. We'll talk.
All right. Bye.